Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius, the official energy drink of PewterReport.com. It is a Tuesday edition of the show. Want to say what up, and we appreciate everybody in the chat, the Pewter people, which we will be conversing with throughout this show, as today's topic is Pro Football Focus's offensive player rankings for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. PFF, of course, is an amazing website. Some of our colleagues work over there, such as Pewter Report alumni Trevor Sikkema, who was part of some of these offensive player rankings. So we'll talk about where the Bucs were listed at some of these positions, and should be a very fun show to get into. Let me know, everyone in the chat, if you can hear me right now, because I'm hearing some different options at the moment. But I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me is James Hill of PewterReport.com. James, how are you doing?
Matt, I don't think anybody can hear you, brother. Hold on one moment. Let's see. Matt?
People are saying they can hear me. Yeah, people are saying they can hear me.
Okay.
So I think you can't hear me at the moment. Let me know if you get, Pewter people, you can hear me. All right, cool. Well, we're off and running. Everyone's saying that you can hear both of us. So, James, not sure why you can't hear me in the moment, but we will get to the player rankings. First, did want to address an article that we spoke about, or that we wrote about earlier today, and that, of course, is the news over Antonio Brown. He was in the news once again. I'll throw the article in the chat. But Antonio Brown talking about the Bucs incident again for the millionth time. I believe he was on Tyreek Hill's show. One moment, please. Let's see what Brown had to say. Yeah, he was on Tyreek Hill's podcast. And yeah, everyone's saying that they can hear both of us. So, James, I would just recommend, you probably can't even hear me, so I'll just text you. All right, James is going to hop off for just a moment. In the meantime, I will keep it moving. And this article. So, if everyone remembers, Antonio Brown, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It started out, he signed like halfway through the season during the Bucs 2020 Super Bowl winning season. Helped the team out very, very well, even scored a touchdown in the Super Bowl game itself. The next season, not as ideal. He got hurt early on in the year and came back later. And then, of course, had the infamous moment where he just quit on the team and, and just said, peace, deuces, leaving the game against the New York Jets when the Bucs miraculously made a comeback. So we'll talk about that in just a moment. James, welcome back to the show. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Oh, my goodness. That was a scary moment, but we're back.
Yeah, that's all right. Cool. Same thing happened when Dave Canales was on, and we rebounded fine. So, James, perfect. I was just kind of recapping the Antonio Brown incident, what went on with all of that. And, he was telling Tyreek Hill and the podcast that he didn't think the Bucs were grateful for him. He felt kind of like lied and deceived when Tom Brady said he was going to feed him the ball against the New York Jets, giving him 10 to 12 touches, which is crazy that he was angry about that because I believe he had 5 at halftime, or at least like midway through the third quarter. Just your overall thoughts about Brown's appearance on that podcast.
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, I mean, you probably expect stuff like this at this point, right? Like, quotes like that from Antonio Brown and just kind of that type of mentality. It's Brown's done it to every single team he's been a part of, right? And
yeah,
at the end of the day, it is what it is. I mean, the guy hasn't played for the Tampa Bay. The guy hasn't played in the NFL period since that whole incident with the New York Jets happened, where he'd left in the middle of the game. It is what it is, man. it just gets more and more just like, I guess, eye roll type of reaction whenever you hear stuff like that, because it's the same type of stuff every single time, man. It's Antonio Brown doesn't feel appreciated anywhere he is. So, that's kind of the common denominator there maybe it doesn't have anything to do with those organizations. Maybe it has to do with the guy himself.
Right. As Wayne Hankinson says, AB, the victim, it very much feels like AB is always playing the woe is me card. Like he had an issue with the Steelers, which the Steelers have been, one of the most well-run organizations in the history of the NFL. That's why they're one of the longest tenured franchises too. And then, we had the whole incident with the Raiders, what went on there with the helmet saga and getting in a fight with the GM before he even played a game. So, going to the Bucs was his last straw, really. And, Tom Brady kind of stuck his neck out there for Antonio Brown, gave him a place to stay. So just to completely, diss Tom Brady, I think was absolutely wild. And every single thing that Antonio Brown said could be. Oh, I forgot he even went to New England because he was there for a half a second and then got cut by the team. But everything that he said can be refuted. For example, the targets, where he, was the second most targeted guy in that game against the Jets before he dipped out. The fact that he was angry over the incentives. The Bucs had games where they specifically helped everyone get their receptions quota by doing little touch passes. They literally did it with Antonio Brown the season before. And then the kicker out of all of this, James, is the fact that, even after the fact, he's still, crapping on Tom Brady and Bruce Arians. He posts the wrong picture of his x-ray of oh, look at my ankle. And then everyone realized it was either the wrong picture or it was a different picture from a later time where there wasn't that ankle injury. So every single thing he said can be refuted. And I don't know, he just doesn't look like he's in the right with any of this.
I mean, out of you know what I mean? You're literally saying that the greatest quarterback player probably in NFL history didn't appreciate you. Even though time and time and time again, Tom Brady was fighting for Antonio Brown, saying, "Hey guys, just trust me. I can make it work, and Brady did for a while, and the Buccaneers made it work for a while, but can only go so far with these types of things, apparently, before something goes wrong, and something went wrong. And, again, for Antonio Brown to say that, all these different types of things, I wasn't appreciated, they didn't want to give me the ball, it's just ludicrous in my opinion.
And then he keeps getting in trouble, too, with different things. He just bought I forgot what football team it is. It's the National Indoor League, the Albany Empire. And he got his team kicked out of the league because he refused to pay the league fees. And then his own team is suing him now because he's not paying the players. So it truly is a hypocritical thing. With all of that said, I still think it was worth getting Antonio Brown. With all the headaches and everything we've seen, the Bucs still won a Super Bowl. So at the end of the day, I still think it's worth it. I'm curious what you think, James, and curious what everyone in the chat thinks as well. Was it still at the end of the day worth getting Antonio Brown for kind of a half a season? Yeah, a season and a half, essentially.
Oh, yeah. I mean, definitely. I mean, obviously it didn't end well. Of course, he left on the team and whatnot, and now he's saying all these different types of things. But at the end of the day, those are just words, man. At the end of the day, he was with the Bucs. He did help him win a Super Bowl. Helped the Buccaneers get a ring. Was a big part of why that was the case. Yeah, I would say it was definitely worth it. We had talked about it before, Matt, here at Pewter Report, where this whole time it was going to be a low risk, high reward type of thing, and those risks did end up happening, but the rewards did end up happening as well. So at the end of the day, you got the whole experience there with Antonio Brown. Now, if it would have only lasted a couple of weeks, wouldn't have been worth it, in my opinion. I don't think it would have been worth it, but you had him for long enough to where it was worth it, in my thoughts and opinions on that.
Right, because if the end goal is to win a Super Bowl, then yes, it was worth it. They completed the goal. If it was anything short, then I would say no, it wasn't worth it. But that's the price you pay. Lego Cookie says AB was 100% worth it. Shane Lambert puts the ring graphic up, so I'm counting that as a yes. Nathan Elliott says Antonio Brown, we got a Super Bowl victory. The Bucs have twice as many as the Saints. Well, they have one more than the Saints. So, yeah, I guess technically that's true.
Technically.
Yeah, technically it's true. Tom Bucs fan says his email saying he was not going to play avoid a $30 million guarantee from Oakland. Yeah, not the wisest of decisions. And this last comment here, football fan says it was worth it because BA's offense required major talent for it to be successful. Absolutely true. They needed a lot of guys to win those one-on-one opportunities. Won't necessarily have to be the case with new offensive coordinator Dave Canales and the new offense he's implementing. We've talked about that a lot. A new zone-style rushing attack, a more of an emphasis of running it, mesh routes, shorter option routes, or at least just, crossers and things of that nature to get everybody open. So we'll see after this year where some of the player rankings, how they will look like. But let's get into the offensive player rankings for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, as we saw on Pro Football Focus. Big fans of PFF. They do a tremendous job of not only writing stories, but just, the analytics of the game, all the individual stats that you can find of players, such as like when a corner is in the slot versus covering in man or in zone. So very, very useful tool from Pro Football Focus. Cannot recommend it enough if you are trying to dig a little deeper into the overall outlook of, the details of the game we love so much, the NFL. So let's start off with the quarterback position, shall we? In this article, we are specifically talking about Baker Mayfield in this one. This was an article back in May written by Sam Monson. And the Bucs are ranked fairly towards the bottom, understandably so. And this is with the assumption that Baker Mayfield is going to win the job. So out of 32 quarterbacks, Baker Mayfield is ranked 28th on this list. And Monson goes on to say, it's difficult to argue that Mayfield's 2022 season was easily predictable, but it's equally difficult to maintain any kind of lofty expectations for him going forward after witnessing it. His 50.6 PFF grade on the year was 13 grading points lower than his previous career worst mark, which involved a torn shoulder. And it speaks volumes that the Rams were happy to let him walk after he led the team to remarkable wins just after stepping off the plane after they traded for him. Mayfield has very good play on his NFL resume, but it's getting harder and harder to see it in the rear view mirror. Now, the bright side of this is that he is not the worst ranked NFC South quarterback. He is second to last because coming in at 31st is Desmond Ridder of the Atlanta Falcons. James, I will ask you, though, how do you feel this ranking goes? Is it properly rated? Is it a little too high? Is it a little too low? Not that you can get that much further down the list. Give me your thoughts.
Yeah, I think that this ranking, it does make sense, right? Because look, folks, admittedly, at the end of the day, Baker Mayfield did not have a great year last year with the Carolina Panthers. Things got a little bit better with the LA Rams, but overall, it was a rough year for Baker, right? And Baker has a lot to prove. Right now, he's in a quarterback competition with Kyle Trask. In my opinion, I think that Baker is a really strong chance to win that starting job, but is this Baker Mayfield's last chance as a starting quarterback in this league? If he doesn't do well this upcoming year, he may be a career backup for the remainder of his time in the NFL. I think that is a pretty legitimate thing that you can say. So Baker being, really in that bottom tier of starting quarterbacks right now, it does make sense based on what happened last year, based on the situation that Baker Mayfield is in. He's got a lot to prove. Now, if he does good, obviously he'll go up in those rankings. But right now, it does make a lot of sense to me. Baker definitely is in a position where it's definitely make it or break it. And that's what Baker has to deal with right now. So yeah, I think that this ranking is pretty appropriate given the circumstances that Mayfield finds himself in. Also the recent history that Mayfield has as well in terms of his overall play last season.
Right. I'm pretty much in a similar boat with you. Baker at 28. You have to go by, the previous groundwork. You can't make this list. And to be fair, you can't make this list and decide, oh, well, the potential of Baker could put him, let's just say, like around 17 and at least be inside the top 20, because you could make that case with literally any other quarterback on this list. So you can't go by the Baker of 3 or 4 years ago when he was shining and leading this team to the playoffs. I think you could maybe bump him up another spot, like Sam Howell's at 27 with the
Mhm.
Commanders, and again, like Howell, the same thing. You're riding on overall the overall potential of what maybe he could turn into if it pans out for him in Washington. You
Mhm.
see some, and what's tough as well is you have rookie quarterbacks that have never played before, but they are drafted within the top 5, top 10. So you're banking on the skill set of what they have.
Yeah.
So the ranking itself is fine. I'm curious what you think, though, of how far he could jump up. Because, I mean, you look at this list, 14 is Derek Carr, 15 is Geno Smith, who had a renaissance year, Jared Goff with the Lions. How many more years is he really going to be starting with them since they just drafted Hendon Hooker, if I'm not mistaken? I know Hooker's got to recover and everything like that, but Justin Fields at 18, Tannehill at 19, Russell Wilson at 20, Mac Jones at 21, and Kenny Pickett and Brock Purdy at 22 and 23. I can see the potential for Baker. Again, if he has not a breakout year because he's been in the league, but if he has a career resurgence,
Mhm.
I mean, I think he can get as high as 17 or 16, depending on the play of some of the other, either rookie quarterbacks or some of these quarterbacks that are trying to really hang on and salvage their careers.
Well, firstly, let me say too, like I remember when I looked at this list, I thought, man, Baker could probably be up at like say 25,
Yeah.
right? Ahead of Sam Howell, Jordan Love, Bryce Young, maybe even like 24, not to put him above Jimmy Garoppolo, but me personally, I would probably have Kenny Pickett below Brock Purdy and Jimmy G. So maybe 24, 25 is where you could put Mayfield. But the peak of where Mayfield can be, I think you take a look at a former quarterback that, Dave Canales has already worked with, Geno Smith. He's at number 15. Jared Goff is at
Yeah.
number 16. Those are two guys that have revived their careers under good offensive coordinator, under good offensive play calling. That I think is where you can see the peak of Baker Mayfield being in the middle of the pack, be it 15, be it 16. That I think is the peak of where you can see Baker Mayfield. If everything goes right, if you see a Geno Smith, Jared Goff type of resurgence for Baker Mayfield, that's where I think you could see him, landing in terms of a quarterback rankings list in the future. That's kind of the peak in my opinion. And even now, again, I'd probably put him up at number 25, move him up a couple more spots than some of those, like what you were saying, Matt, inexperienced guys are there right now. But I think the peak is somewhere in the middle of the pack in terms of quarterbacks.
And I'd say the bright side, the thing that Baker has going for him outside of like Dave Canales being there, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, who we'll talk about in a little bit, it just takes one good season and everyone's in love with you again. It is very much a what have you done for me league kind of late. Like Geno Smith was out of the league essentially. Like he was a backup, but he was a backup without really he didn't go to many situations where it was, oh, he could compete to be the starter. It was, there's a clear cut starting quarterback for the teams he was on, and Geno's there to back up in case there's injury or anything like that. And, the same thing goes for a couple other guys on this list. Like, Kenny Pickett didn't have a, tremendous, or, Kenny Pickett's still pretty young, but like Daniel Jones, I think is another guy. And many times people like to mock Daniel Jones and what he did for the Giants. And then last year, he had a pretty solid season and got that big contract that I think the Giants, personally, I think the Giants overpaid for, but you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't, because the Giants made the postseason. They knew they were in a situation where they weren't going to have a top 5, top 10 pick. So, you only had so many options. Get to a couple comments. San Anto Gato says, too bad not all the facts are ever stated when talking about Baker. Al Bundy kind of agrees with what you said, James. Baker Mayfield is a 21 to 26th ranked quarterback. And Al later goes on to say, if Baker doesn't get dumb and reckless, being the NFC South and playing the AFC South, Baker has the potential to get 15 to 20 ranking in stats. our wide receiver corp, is pretty good. Yeah, I'm in full agreement. He has the potential to get right around that top 15, which you want to talk about huge jumps and career resurgences. I think definitely is a huge boost for the Bucs that they will gladly take. Now, James, this next position at running back, a little bit of disrespect, but I understand where a national writer is coming from with this list, because this next article with the running backs, written by PFF's own Trevor Sikkema, former Pewter Report writer, and we love Trevor so much. He's been a huge mentor to me in my career, and always great chatting with Trevor. Saw him at the Combine a couple of months ago when that was going on. But out of 32 running backs, just want to double check I didn't miss anything, there is not a Tampa Bay Buccaneer on this list. Now, granted, this was written at the end of May, but James, no Bucs. What gives, man?
Yeah, what a interesting situation for that, right? Because I know that at least in terms of local media, Bucks fans and whatnot, there's a lot of hype going on for Rachaad White right now, right? They got rid of Leonard Fournette. Rachaad White seems to be that guy. Heck, even recently here on the Pewter Report podcast, Dave Canales talked about Rachaad White. Again, just giving so much praise for White and what he can potentially be in this Buccaneers offense, right? But as you said, it's what have you done for me lately, league? And Rachaad White, while he had a relatively decent rookie season overall, he has still got a lot to prove. How is he going to look in this new Dave Canales Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense as the lead guy, as the number one running back? What can he do in the passing game? Those are all questions that are on a lot of people's minds. And while there is a lot of optimism, there certainly still remains a lot left to be seen. So I believe that, come next year, Rachaad White is going to be on this list. And where is he? Who knows? We're going to have to see how well he does. But I think that this is definitely an example, Matt, of like what you said. It's a what have you done for me lately type of situation. Rachaad White, unfortunately, just didn't get enough opportunities last year, I think, to 100% be considered on this list so far at this point.
Yeah, I don't disagree with Trevor's list at all, because we're all talking. We just talked about it with Baker, but I think a little bit more it's the potential of Rachaad White. Like, if you just looked at Rashaad's stats, they don't add up to anyone on this list. He had 1 rushing touchdown and 2 receiving touchdowns. And to take that into consideration, Trevor has Jamal Williams, who's now with the Saints, at 25th in the league. And Williams led the league in rushing touchdowns last year with 17. So if you have a guy that was reaching the end zone at least once a game, how can you justify putting Rachaad White even like at 32, which he has David Montgomery now of the Detroit Lions? Now, the potential of Rachaad White and the fact, as you said, that Leonard Fournette is not there anymore, I would be very surprised if Rachaad White is not on this list next season, just because he is going to be the bell cow, just because, Dave Canales is going to be drawing up a lot of things for him, mostly in the run game, but in the passing game too. It's very interesting to see the ceiling that Rachaad White can reach this year. What do you think that ceiling is, James?
Yeah, well, firstly, it's definitely, being on this list. But number two is, hey, it all depends on what he showcases, Like, I think that Rachaad White can be, let's say a top 20 running back in this league, something along those lines, if everything does go well for him, right? If he is used very smartly by Dave Canales, like, a lot of people here at Pewter Report and in the Bucs fan base think he is going to be used as a receiver, as a runner. I think that this is a very good offensive fit for Rachaad White as well. Yeah, I think he's definitely a guy that you could maybe say is a top 20 running back, certainly a top 32 running back, of course. He is definitely a guy that I think that can be up there in terms of running back rankings and really showcasing overall ability. So I think that is definitely a ceiling for Rachaad White, maybe like a top 20 type of ranking, if everything does go well regarding Dave Canales and his offense and everything along those lines.
Put it this way. If Rachaad White, which we recently wrote a story about him, well, it was in the Bucs Monday mailbag. If Rachaad White is the Bucs' first 1,000-yard rusher in however long ago it was when Doug Martin did it. I think he gets onto PFF's list. Now, the question is whether or not he'll be, around 22, whether he gets into the top 15, maybe even top 10 if he goes absolutely bonkers this season. But it's more excitement with Rachaad White. And Trevor knows the Bucs too. If it was another national writer out there, I wouldn't even bat an eye that Rashad's not on this list, because you got to give the national writers some slack. They're not watching every single practice of the Bucs like we are. They have so many teams that they, have to cover. But there's another running back I want to talk about as well. That is Keyshawn Vaughn. He's obviously not on this list, nor would we think he's going to be on this list. But how do you feel about him as the number 2 running back on the depth chart for the Bucs this year? Should they try to look at another veteran route? Are you putting any stock in guys like Ronnie Brown or Sean Tucker, if he's even able to, get healthy by training camp? What's your thoughts with that?
Well, that's that. First, I'm happy you brought that up, because that's going to be somebody I'm going to be talking about here on the channel coming up soon.
Oh, great.
In terms of some content, bringing up Keyshawn Vaughn. And, right now it's so interesting, right? Because Dave Canales had said, hey, he gets all the runs. He's looking really good, right? I think was basically what it boils down to, Dave Canales talking about. Now, right now, Keyshawn Vaughn is going to be in a training camp battle against Chase Edmonds, who Dave Canales described as lightning in a bottle, right? That's going to be one of the bigger battles I think that people aren't really thinking about in terms of training camp and whatnot. Keyshawn Vaughn versus Chase Edmonds, for those running back 2 opportunities. Both guys have a lot to prove, Matt. Both of them are going into contract years. Chase Edmonds signed a 1-year prove-it deal. Keyshawn Vaughn is on the last year of his rookie deal. So both guys have a lot going, or a lot riding on this upcoming season. And we'll see how Vaughn does. Vaughn has not gotten the most opportunities with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. People forget, former 3rd-round pick, 76th overall selection back in the 2020 NFL draft. I remember talking to a lot of Bucs fans who were, just kind of puzzled a little bit at that selection. What was the mindset behind that pick? So far up to this point, 3 years into his career, Keyshawn Vaughn has not had a lot of opportunities. Now, granted, he's been playing behind Ronald Jones, former 2nd-round pick, Leonard Fournette, former big money, former 1st-round running back, and Rachaad White, recent 3rd-round pick. Keyshawn Vaughn's played behind all of those guys on the depth chart. So there hasn't been a lot of opportunities there. Now, while some people can argue, well, maybe there's a reason that, Keyshawn Vaughn hasn't gotten a lot of opportunities. I am more so looking at it as possibly a victim of circumstance, just being kind of buried on the depth chart a little bit, not being able to get those types of chances to show what he can do. So I think that Keyshawn Vaughn's going to be one of the more interesting guys to pay attention to. That battle versus Chase Edmonds, who is going to prevail. Both guys have a lot of good momentum for themselves in terms of what they have showcased in these mandatory mini camps, in OTAs and whatnot. Should be one of the more interesting battles going into training camp. Should they explore the veteran route? It's possible. I think that you could potentially look at maybe bringing in another guy. They've got some guys, like you said, Sean Tucker, some other running backs, Ronnie Brown in there as well. They could probably do for maybe another veteran, but ultimately, I wouldn't be surprised if they also want to give Keyshawn Vaughn a chance as well and have him legitimately compete against Chase Edmonds.
Yeah, I would shy away from bringing in another veteran. I know everyone has talked about Ezekiel Elliott or Dalvin Cook. I think that would be a gross misuse of the rest of the free agency funds that the Bucs have. I really think they should just let Rachaad do his thing as the starter. And I know Dave Canales has been extremely complimentary of really everyone, but, went out of his way to talk about Keyshawn Vaughn. I'm just not buying it with Keyshawn. I don't dislike the guy at all. I think he's properly fine as a 3rd overall running back. I think Chase Edmonds wins that job as RB2, which I think is good because Edmonds can get banged up here and there, and he's bounced around. I think Vaughn is going to be more of a special teams guy. As you said, his last year on the contract, and I don't think he's in Tampa after this season. That's why it makes me excited for some of the undrafted free agent running backs like Ronnie Brown, who Skip Pete went out of his way to talk about when I asked him specifically about Sean Tucker, and then he started talking about Ronnie Brown after he got into Tucker. And the hype train behind Tucker is gigantic right now, calling him a baby Nick Chubb. We'll see what's up with him, but he might be one of the most exciting guys to watch once he's ready to go in training camp.
Yeah, real quick, I want you to bring up that photo real quick
Yeah.
of Sean Tucker. I mean, you know, let's go ahead and take a look at that photo real quick because whenever you look at, I mean, look at the biceps, man.
Yeah.
My gosh, that man is looking jacked. I mean,
Mhm.
yeah, there's a reason people are calling this guy Baby Nick Chubb. He's built like a freaking tank, Matt. This is a guy that I think if he is fully healthy, and we'll have to wait and see what the situation is regarding that. He's a guy that really, really can surprise some people. I've even talked to some people, Matt, where hey, if he's fully healthy and he makes that big of an impact, he could be a guy that you may consider at running back too if he really is able to make that much of an impact. Now, I don't know if I fully agree with that. I think you've certainly, got to really ease in Sean Tucker. It is very unfortunate for him that he has
Yeah.
not been able to participate in any of these early offseason workouts. He's got a lot of catching up to do. But you look at him, you look at Ronnie Brown, those are some interesting, undrafted running backs that the team brought in. Those are guys that, very well could have been drafted, but somehow fell to the Bucs in terms of undrafted guys. They've got a good, bright, young group of running backs that certainly have a lot of potential. But the biggest question for Sean Tucker is when is he going to be available? You see the size, certainly,
Mhm.
and going back to college, you've seen the ability there for Tucker. It's just all a matter of being able to get out there on the football field to showcase what he can do. And I see a comment from Shane here, talking about definitely worth the gamble. Yeah, I think that that's certainly a guy that's worth checking out in Sean Tucker. Seeing what he can do, but he's certainly got to get out there and get on the football field to be able to showcase his potential and his ability.
Yeah, he is built huge. We'll just say
Crazy.
that. I want to see him truck some people this year if he's able to play. And he's like fairly quick too. Not necessarily home run speed, but he's not just like a powerhouse and that's about it. Like he has a little bit of everything. I would like to see him in goal line situations. That would be cool. Wayne Hankinson says Rashad White and the O line have to prove themselves this season. I think the whole running game as a whole needs to
Oh
prove
yeah.
themselves. But running game, offensive line goes hand in hand. Shane says not having White on there could be good. He likes to prove people wrong. I think he's going to be one of our best weapons. And then Shane follows up saying, I'm with you, James. I think our running back room looks solid. Now, the most solid room in terms of your starters, of course, is going to be the wide receiver room, which we will talk about in just a moment. Well, you want to talk about solid, you want to talk about great, you got to be talking about Celsius Energy Drinks, the official sponsor of the Pewter Report podcast. There are so many different flavors of Celsius Energy Drinks to choose from. So make Celsius your number one pick, whether you're having that Oasis 5 Celsius, sparkling lemon lime, the sparkling orange, the Arctic Vibes, my personal favorite. Cucumber lime's great too. Jackrabbit, strawberry lemonade. So many different flavors. Zero sugar or preservatives, no crash or anything like that when you have the energy drink. So it's just great to enjoy and help you keep it moving. If you want to find out where to get a Celsius energy drink or where you can buy one, go to the Celsius store locator on their website, punch in your address, and it will tell you the closest geographical location where you can go out and buy one, whether it's your local Walmart, Target, convenience store, or your bodega. If you want to get them in bulk, which I would recommend because of all the different flavors they have, go to Amazon. Get that variety pack because variety is the spice of life. You can have it sent to your house or apartment every week, month, quarterly, yearly. Have it sent to your residence. Just make sure you're drinking Celsius energy drinks. Make Celsius your number one pick. Celsius, the official sponsor of the Pewter Report podcast. All right. This next position is one that maybe the most exciting position in the NFL outside of quarterback, but one that is near and dear to Bucs fans' hearts because they have two of the best in the game. Of course, we're talking about Mike Evans. We're talking about Chris Godwin. You see both of them in that photo. The wide receiver position. And if you look at the rankings, these ones came out the end of May by Sam Monson, who also wrote the quarterback one. The highest rated Buccaneers wide receiver is Mike Evans at 11. And of course, again, with this ranking, top 32 in the league. Chris Godwin, 10 spots later, comes in at 21 on this list. So what Monson had to say about Evans, The consistency shown by Evans throughout his NFL career has been remarkable. He has caught more than 65 passes for at least 1,000 yards in all 9 of his seasons, and in 6 of those years, he recorded 8 or more touchdowns. Injuries have started to bite over the past few seasons, limiting his effectiveness, if not keeping him off the fields. That's not totally true, but he remains an elite target, particularly downfield. Now, for Chris Godwin, Monson says Godwin's best season came back in 2019, but he has been a consistently excellent receiver from primarily the slot throughout his NFL career. He has never once caught less than 50% of his contested targets over a single season, and for his career has come up with 60.7% of such passes, one of the highest rates in football. Now, James, we've talked a lot about potential and what they can be. We know what Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are. So when you look at this list, let's just talk about where they were last season, looking at this list compared to the other wide receivers. Are they properly rated, or should there be some changes one way or another?
Yeah, well, firstly, in the case of Mike Evans, I think first thing I want to say about this is thank you for Mike Evans getting that ranking of number 11, because, it's some good respect there, right? To have Mike Evans at number 11, you have him above guys like DeAndre Hopkins, Garrett Wilson, DK Metcalf. I think if this was like a list, a few years ago, Mike Evans would have been further down this list. But I think now
Right.
he's starting to get more national recognition, right? Now, I will say, I agree with you where it says, if not limiting his effectiveness, if not keeping him off the field. You can't say this guy is the essence of consistency, but then say that, it limits his effectiveness. I think he's plenty. I think he's plenty effective. Also, he's only missed 3 games the past 3 years, something along those lines. Like, he's never played less than 13 games in a season. So to say that the guy's like, injured a lot, I think that that's a bit of a stretch, but I think it's a very good ranking there for Mike Evans at number 11. I think that is a very fair ranking, right? The guys above him, Deebo Samuel, CeeDee Lamb, McLaurin, Brown, Cooper Kupp, Diggs, Chase, Hill, Jefferson, and Adams, it's tough to argue, that those guys are worse than Mike Evans, in terms of just in all around types of things. Chris Godwin, I don't know if this is just diving in more so the fact that, Chris Godwin, he had, was coming back from a really tough injury last year. He still had I think a very overall good year in terms of overall stats and whatnot. But I think that Godwin, and even he talked about it, that he's, pretty much back, 99% from that injury, still at 1,000 yards last year, has still been able to showcase some overall just really, really good ability, right? So I think, Godwin, I think you can make an argument should probably be a little bit higher, maybe say like number 18, something along those lines. I think would be a fine ranking for Godwin. I think, Godwin's one of those guys that could certainly jump up a couple of spots on this list as well, depending on how he does this upcoming season. But overall, both rankings, especially, in the case of Mike Evans, I think it's a pretty fair ranking.
I would bump Mike up into the top 10. Terry McLaurin at 8 and CD at 9. I could see, like, I would put Mike and Deebo above those two guys, because I do think there is some precedent of doing it consistently where, like, at times CeeDee Lamb can just kind of check out of the game. And, like, there were times when Amari Cooper was on the Cowboys that Cooper was the star wide receiver and CD was playing second fiddle. And then you throw in those running backs. I mean, you can make a case that, I know Ezekiel Elliott's not on the Cowboys anymore, but Zeke and Tony Pollard were way more important to the Cowboys' success than what CD Lamb did, So, like, Mike Evans, you knew that he was the guy on offense for the Bucs. Like, even with Gronk and even AB, like, Mike was still the guy consistently scoring and obviously getting those 1,000 yards. And, Terry McLaurin obviously has had a lot of success coming into the league, playing on a bad team with Washington. Pretty high PFF grade as well. But he's worked with a couple of bad quarterbacks, but so has Mike Evans in his entire career. So I understand the excitement and athleticism with Terry McLaurin, but personally, I would put Deebo at 8, Mike at 9, and then bump down Terry McLaurin and CeeDee Lamb. As far as Godwin goes, I think, injuries obviously hurt him a lot last year. if this was 2019 Chris Godwin, or even, you know, 2021 Chris Godwin when he tore his ACL.
Mm-hmm.
Either versions of that Chris Godwin, I think he's right around, 12 where DeAndre Hopkins is. Like, honestly, because he was going buck wild by the
Bro.
end of that before he got hurt.
Bro,
Against the Saints. Yeah.
2019 Chris Godwin was a menace. Like,
Absolutely.
he was going crazy.
Yeah, like, no question about it. He was popping off. But you look at some of the people, like DeAndre Hopkins, 12, I get that, but that's out of more respect than anything else. Garrett Wilson at 13, as myself that watches the New York Jets, I'm very happy with that ranking, but I think it's tough for Garrett Wilson. He was Rookie of the Year to automatically put him at 13. Also, again, like, longevity and just proving it for more than 1 year. Amon-Ra St. Brown, that was without question a breakout year for him. He automatically gets put 15 because of that? I don't necessarily know. Then you have DJ Moore at 16, Waddle at 17, Devontae Smith, T. Higgins, and Brandon Ayuk before you get to Godwin. I think you can get Godwin into the top 20. But overall, yeah. I think they are pretty properly rated.
Yeah, like I think in the case too, like there's a few things I would change, right? Like, the first DK, being below Garrett Wilson, like you said, like Pro Football Focus does do this sometimes, and not to knock them, love the folks over at PFF and what they do, but there are some times where if some guy has one really good year, they'll shoot him to the moon on some of these lists, guys going to their second year and whatnot. So yeah, there is definitely some rearranging you could do on this list overall. Still though, the fact that the Bucs have, essentially a guy basically in the top 10 and a guy in the top 20, basically at that wide receiver position is pretty wild in my opinion.
Yeah. One of the only lists where the Bucs have more than one player on it. I guess, like, with quarterback and running back, you're not going to see too many differences there. Let's get to a couple comments. Charlie Abraham says, I think I like Evans' ranking, but I think that Godwin can play himself into the top 15. Sure. Football fan says Godwin should have been 12. Is that a little play on his old jersey number, which obviously he cares about a lot? Charlie Abrahams then says, I also like Matt's take right now. Definitely think Mike could be 8 and 9. Wayne says both will have great seasons in this new offense. A couple others as well that people like. Did I get to? Yeah, Wayne in the beginning said Evans and Godwin could both get 1,200 yards this season. That would be a great year for the Bucs offense. We'll see how the ball gets distributed. I'm not willing to make that assumption just yet. I want to watch a little bit more training camps before we go that high. What do you think?
The fact that, these guys have had 3 seasons, not back to back to back, but have had 3 separate seasons where both of them have gotten 1,000 yards is already pretty freaking crazy in my opinion. Yeah. Like that's an insane duo. Geez Louise, man. So, we'll see if they both get 1,200. That'd be freaking wild. I think that whoever's the quarterback at that point would be eating pretty good. You know what I mean? If both guys are getting 1,200 yards, good Lord, man. Like, that'd be nuts.
It's very interesting looking at this list. And depending on what happens this year with Dave Canales and everything we've already talked about, you could see so many more upgrades for Bucs players in these rankings, or you could see guys even come off this list, or at least move lower. Even if the Bucs have a bad year, I don't think Mike or Chris are completely coming off of the list. No. Baker can't go that much lower. Rachaad White's not even on it. And this next position group, spearheaded by Cade Otton, who's going into his second year, does not find any Buccaneers on this list either. Now, this list, for whatever reason, is a top 15 tight end rankings by PFF going into the 2023 season. This is written by John Costco. This came out in late May as well. He breaks it up into different tiers, starting with elite, where you have Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, George Kittle. Really tough to argue that. Tier 2, which is highlighted as great with potential to become elite, you got Dallas Goedert, TJ Hawkinson, Pat Freiermuth, Kyle Pitts. I wouldn't put I wouldn't put Pitts in tier 2 at the moment. Just like, I don't know, he hasn't really had much production.
Mhm.
Tier 3, good, but needs pieces around to be great. Dalton Schultz, Taysom Hill at 9.
Whoa.
Wow.
Oh no.
um,
Oh.
Geez, I just go back to that Bucs Saints game last year when Taysom Hill makes that catch to get a first down. Game's over, but Keanu Neal rocked it out of him in that game. David Njoku 10, Darren Waller 11, Dawson Knox 12, Chigoziem Okonoko, the Titans tight end at 13, Evan Ingram at 14, and Gerald Everett at 15. So no Kate Otten, no Payne Durham, no Keeft. I can't say I'm totally shocked about this one. Kate Otten had a nice season as a rookie. Didn't really turn any heads necessarily. I don't even know this year if he can be put into the top 15. But with that said, I still feel pretty optimistic about the Bucs tight end group just to be productive and effective. And I think that's really all you need in this offense. No one has to be Gronk. No one has to be Travis Kelce. You just need the tight ends to really pitch in when they need to. And I think Kate Otten can do that. And we'll see what's up with Payne Durham. What do you think, James?
Yeah, I mean, first I want to say, bro, Evan Ingram had 766 receiving yards, 4 receiving touchdowns last year, and he's below Taysom Hill.
Yeah, the
And
Taysom Hill thing. I respect any writer. I don't mean to cut you off, James. I
yeah,
apologize.
yeah, no.
Taysom Hill at 9 is pretty outlandish.
Shocking, let's say. I don't even think Taysom, anyway, I don't even Taysom Hill should just have his own list by himself.
Yeah.
Anyway, to talk about our, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers tight end room, our thoughts and opinions on that is, look, right now, it's understandable why the Bucs wouldn't have a tight end on this list. While there is a lot of optimism and a lot of good things being said about a guy like Kate Otten, a guy like Payne Durham, it's a pretty young, inexperienced room right now, Matt. Like Kate Otten and Keeft are the quote unquote veterans, and they're in year 2. So this is a room that I would say has the most to prove out of any room that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have besides quarterback, of course, out of, overall productivity and just ability, right? Because you have former 6th round picks, Payne Durham and Keeft. You have former 4th round pick, Kate Otten here. It's going to be interesting to see how these guys do, right? I know a lot of people love Kate Otten. I know a lot of people like the idea of Keeft and all the different things that he can do. I know a lot of people like this size and the red zone threat ability of a Payne Durham, but we got to see this group actually go out there, get some reps under their belt come game time, and actually showcase what they can do come game time as well. So this to me, is a thing that, yeah, it does make sense that a Tampa Bay Buccaneer would not be on this list. There's Tanner Tuila as well, by the way, another guy who got some praise
He did
from Dave Canales. So it's a group that has a lot to prove, Matt. I think that's a safe thing to say. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that this group is young. They don't have a ton of NFL experience. And, those guys are going to be getting some opportunities this upcoming year. And it should be one of the more interesting situations to follow.
Yeah, without question. And I like what you said that the tight ends have the most to prove this year. Because I was going to say that tight end, in my opinion, is the one position, at least on the offensive side of the ball, that I think could benefit most from having a veteran presence in there. And when I say veteran presence, I just mean a guy, maybe he already knows this offense, or just a guy that's going to be a coach and a mentor to these players. Now, they had it last year a little bit with Cam Brate and Kyle Rudolph, but they were also taking these players playing time, Like Cam Brate was utilized a lot. Kyle Rudolph got in there, scored a touchdown last season. I want a veteran to come in and not see the field at all. They don't even need to dress on game days. I just want a veteran tight end in there to coach up all of these young, exciting players such as Kate Otten, Keeft, and Payne Durham. Speaking of Payne Durham, Thursday's show, he is going to be part of the Pewter Report podcast. He's coming on as a guest on Thursday, where we do it at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So continuing a run of having players and coaches on the Pewter Report podcast. And we're very excited to have Payne Durham on this Thursday. Today is Tuesday. This Thursday at 7 p.m. Make sure you get ready to watch it because it should be fun with him on the show. Let's see. Charlie says Taysom Hill being ranked is laughable, LOL. And Wayne says, I don't think the tight end group will do much this season. I mean, K-Dot had his moments last year. A couple of touchdowns late, produced in the second half, and scored the game-winning touchdowns and game-tying touchdowns, too, in games late in the year. So K-Dot, I think, is at least building an okay resume. And I think the biggest improvement that the Bucs can have really at tight end specifically is the work in the red zone. And that's kind of like why they drafted Payne Durham. And I think Kate Otten can play a role in that as well. And if they could produce in the red zone, that would be absolute money. And speaking of money, if you want to manage your finances to the best of your ability, Muni Financial can help you.
At Muni Financial, we help you live in the now.
Congratulations. We're so happy for you.
Thank you.
And even though the now may feel very different, you still need to plan for the future.
How's retirement treating you? Oh, just fantastic.
I know I say it all the time, but you really got to come up to Colorado.
Let's do it. All right. Yeah.
We can help you develop that plan to keep you on track so you can still prepare for tomorrow, today. Muni Financial. Plan ahead, stay ahead.
That's right. Make a call over to Muni Financial. They can help you in so many different ways, whether it's advisory, legacy and retirement. If you got to pay for your child's, college degree, if you got kids going to college, they can help you with smart investments and savings and annuities and sales and tradings as well. So give them a call, Muni Financial, based out of Colorado, but can help you anywhere around the world, which is great. So Muni Financial, check them out. The last position as we wrap things up, this show is absolutely flown by.
Oh, yeah.
The last position, it's actually a group effort because it's the offensive line. Now, this story was written by Sam Monson, who's done a couple of the other ones. This one was written on June 13th. He ranks all the offensive lines as a group. The Bucs came in at 14th. And with, the proper offensive line, Tristan Wirfs at left tackle, Filer at guard, Ryan Jensen at center, Cody Mauch at right guard, and Luke Gedeke at right tackle. The right up there is the Bucs are taking a gamble that arguably the best right tackle in football will transfer that play to the left side where he played in college. Wirfs is early enough into his career that should be fine. But it's certainly a risk. Tampa Bay's line will now have to play its trade without Tom Brady in the fastest average time to throw in the NFL, which made their lives easier. What I think does help is that Dave Canales' offense is, pretty quick release and, getting the ball out on shorter routes will definitely help with the blocking scheme. But James, 14th, I thought this was a great rank. I think the Bucs should be ranked way, way lower or higher, I guess, than 14. Bucs offensive line is getting a lot of praise for not playing that well last year.
No, and there's so many different things going on with this O-line right now, right, Matt? Like, you have Ryan Jensen coming back from a pretty bad, significant injury. How is he going to look? You have another new starting pair of guards in Matt Filer and in potentially Cody Mauch, or possibly even Robert Hainsey in there as well. We'll have to see who wins those starting guard jobs. Luke Gedeke is moving over from left guard to right tackle. How is he going to do? Tristan Wirfs is going to move over from right tackle to left tackle. How is he going to do? This entire offensive line is full of, certainly some risks and definitely a lot to prove types of situations, right? And I'm going to tell you right now, Matt, if it does work out, this O-line is going to be looking pretty darn good, right? If Tristan Wirfs can showcase he is just as good of a left tackle as he is a right tackle, first off, I've said it before and I'll say it again, that man's going to get a bag. He is going to get paid. And if Luke Gedeke is able to showcase dramatic improvement at right tackle versus how he played at left tackle, that's very good as well. And then you've got Matt Filer, a very capable veteran at left guard. You've got Cody Mauch potentially coming in at right guard. We would see how he would do. But also, I don't think you can count out a guy like Robert Hainsey also. I think that Robert Hainsey was one of those guys who was slated to be this team's starting guard at either left guard or right guard before Ryan Jensen had went down with this injury. So there's a lot of different guys who have a lot of different ability, and I don't necessarily think that the starting offensive line that Pro Football Focus gave is the one that's going to be set in stone, especially at the guard positions. I think you pencil that in, but there's a lot of risk to this offensive line, which could potentially lead to phenomenal rewards, Matt, but it has to, remain to be seen here.
Yeah, the only part of the offensive line that I feel good about is the left side. And that's even with Tristan Wirfs moving from right to left. So there's still a little bit of a question, as PFF kind of pointed out in their article. It is a lot. And Filer, like, new guy coming from a different team. So you don't know how that chemistry is going to gel, at least right away. And then you look at the right side, everything you said, like two unproven guys, a player that had to move positions because he struggled at guard and now got to keep playing tackle. Mauk being a rookie. And then Ryan Jensen, how is he going to look from that surgery? Or at least coming back from that injury, I should say, because he rehabbed it. A lot of question marks. For them to be put at 14, I thought they should have been ranked way higher, especially when they were ranked above teams such as the 49ers, who have one of the best offenses in the league, and the Miami Dolphins, same thing. But what excites me about that is you look at the 49ers, who come from the Kyle Shanahan offense, and you look at the Dolphins, who come from the Mike McDaniels type of offense. Dave Canales isn't exactly that, but there are certain similarities and traits from it. If people are holding the Bucs offensive line in that regard with this new offense, they have a ton of exciting possibilities in front of them to be that much better and just be that great of a unit in general. So while I disagree with the overall rankings that they should be way higher on the list, like maybe even into the 20s, based on the fact that they were ranked 32nd overall in running the ball last year, at least with this new style of offense, you could be looking at something a little bit better going into this year. But yeah, that may be the most surprising ranking out of any of the Bucs players or groups out of all of these positions. But curious what everyone thinks. The Pewter people, feel free to comment on this list with how you feel about it. And while you're doing that, make sure you're following us on all of our social media platforms on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Pewter Report. And of course, our YouTube channel, which you're on right now, is Pewter Report TV. James has been doing a fantastic job putting out videos on a daily basis. We got a ton of content and more to come, especially when training camp gets here. And we get a couple more press conferences, interviews, and training camp clips as well. So please like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. We'd really appreciate it. We appreciate all the Pewter people as well. Just a reminder, tomorrow's show is at 7 p.m. We talked about the offense today and their Pro Football Focus rankings. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about the defense and where PFF has them ranked at each position. And then, of course, on Thursday, we got Payne Durham coming on the show, Bucs rookie tight end. So a lot of exciting stuff coming up over the next 2 days at 7 p.m. Eastern time. But that's going to do it for us on today's show. For James Hill, I'm Matt Matera saying thank you, everybody, for watching, and we will see you tomorrow at 7 p.m. for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.
Thank you.